Hey, I'm Shyfoxx, and today we're going to be drawing Kirby. I'm going to be going through the whole process in real time, step by step, so that you can follow along. This tutorial was intended for digital artists, but if you're drawing on paper, you can still follow along and modify your creation for a traditional medium. In other words, just ignore the parts when I talk about digital art tools. Feel free to pause at any time if I'm going too fast. If you enjoy draw-alongs and want to see other art tutorials of mine, be sure to like and subscribe. Alright, we're gonna get started. First thing, file, new, gonna create a canvas. I am gonna put this on a fairly large canvas size, 5000 by 5000, resolution of 300 dpi. I'm gonna start by drawing a circle with a sketching tool. This is gonna be Kirby's body. We're going to draw a circle. I always go around a few times to get a general idea of a circle. We don't need to be experts at drawing circles. We can just sketch it in. That's the beauty of sketches. They can be kind of rough. And the next thing I do is turn down the opacity of this layer because it's just a guideline. I'll create a new layer and I'll actually start drawing with this as my guide. Kirby is round, so that makes this pretty simple. I'm just going to do the top of the circle here. Now, we're going to have him holding up the pancakes. So we're going to have his little arms holding that up. We'll start by just doing each arm. Just like little round nubs here. I'm actually going to make it bigger. And I'll try and keep them symmetrical, roughly the same size. They don't need to be exactly the same. I think it looks nice if they're not exactly the same. Touch it up with the eraser and resketch if necessary. Now I'm going to draw one of his feet. Kind of sticking it. That's not quite big enough, so I'm going to select it, resize it here, increase it. That's perfect. We're going to sketch in the rest of his body shape here. Body's done. We're going to do the other foot, kind of like he's stepping down. So far it might be like, I don't really know what I'm looking at, but that's okay. It'll make sense soon, especially once we get the pancakes in there. Again, this one's too small. We're going to just increase the size of it. Sketches are rough, so this is totally fine. Now I'm going to need some room for my pancakes, so I'm going to pull the whole thing down a bit. And the next thing I'm going to do is draw in the face. Kirby has long oval-like eyes. Sketch those in. This is probably one part where two things being symmetrical is kind of important, so let's make sure these eyes are symmetrical. We might need to copy paste one eye to be like the other. If you need to do that, that's fine. And I like to pick the eyes up and move them around. I think this is a step sometimes that people forget to do. We want to make sure the placement's good, so pick the things up like the eyes and facial features, move them around till you like where they're positioned. In this case, positioning it rather high as a regular Kirby that might be down further, but because of the pose, it's almost like he's looking up at his pancakes, so we're gonna pull his eyes up a bit. I'm gonna give him kind of a happy mouth because I think he's excited about his pancakes. Currently invisible pancakes. So our mouth shape kind of curves up like this and around like this. You can think of like a letter D, but on its side, but we actually curve this part out a little bit in this case. And I also like to draw a rounded curve for where the tongue is. Another really important part for our Kirby is the cute cheeks. Cute oval-like cheeks. So I'm going to put that on either side. Again, I'm going to move the position of these things. Lasso tool is like a lifesaver. I use it all the time, both in sketching and in coloring actually. At this point we can get rid of our circle layer if we wanted to. Doesn't matter, we'll get rid of it for now. Alright, now we're gonna draw pancakes. gonna start by sketching the plate that the pancakes are on. So another oval. There's a lot of ovals in this, it would seem. Lots of oval practice. I'm actually gonna go back in and erase the inside this oval because I want it to look a little cleaner. Don't want it to get too messy. Need some clean space. We're actually putting pancakes on this plate. Positioning wise, I think the plate should be down closer to the top of Kirby's head here. And I'm going to stack these pancakes. We're going to have one on the top. Draw oval above our other oval. It's going to look a little messy. We're going to have a few different shapes happening. As much as pancakes are flat, we are going to make this a three-dimensional pancake. So we're going to bring it down on the sides, just kind of round it. Draw in that pancake width. Maybe even erase in here to make it clear what's happening. So we have a three-dimensional looking pancake. I'm going to draw the next pancake in our stack. Little curve on either side. Draw around, connect them. We want our pancake to seem like it has some width to it, so I'm actually going to go on the inside and draw that curve so it feels like it's also three-dimensional, stacked on top of each other. And we're going to do this one more time for pancake number 3. Draw that rounded shape again. It almost could be like a burger at this point. And then we're going to do the same thing here and put the line in between to give it some dimension. It'll make sense when we start to color it too, and hopefully this part isn't too confusing, but you know, if it's confusing, you can always just draw like one pancake instead of the stack of 3. Just gonna clean that up a little bit. I'm gonna erase the top of Kirby's head because of the angle of our plate. It's gonna be in front, and I'll also erase the overlap with the arms so that Kirby is holding our pancakes up. Our pancake could use a couple things. Our pancake could use a little piece of butter, draw a little square, and add some dimension to it, another little three-dimensional shape. And I think the other fun thing to put on it is, if these are fancy pancakes, then maybe some whipped cream. We're gonna add a little line like that, a little sausage shape, just to simplify. We're gonna add another one, another sausage shape. Didn't like that one, this is better. Top of this is gonna have that little whipped cream points, kind of like that. If you want to get fancy, we can do some lines showing the directional curve of the whipped cream. Kind of angle them. Kind of gives a whipped cream texture. And I like it when our layers of our whipped cream get wider towards the bottom. So I'm going to widen this base and narrow at the top. I think that'll look a little better. Gonna erase the overlap inside. And the only other thing our pancake needs is some syrup. So I'm gonna drizzle some syrup. And I think it would be a good idea if our syrup even came off of the pancake, dripping down. I'm actually gonna make a new layer because this might get confusing. Sometimes making a new layer when you're sketching can be a good idea so that you don't confuse yourself too much. And we're gonna have this dribble down. We're gonna have a little bloop like that. I don't know what to call that. I'm calling it a bloop. I just make words up when I'm drawing because it doesn't matter what we call it. It just matters what it looks like. It looks like a bloop. I'm gonna connect this to the top. I'm gonna erase the inside of where the syrup is so we're not confused to what we're looking at. To be honest, drawing these pancakes is probably much more complicated than drawing actual Kirby, but you guys can do it. You can always slow down, go back, pause, whatever you need to do to follow along You can always change it up. If pancakes isn't working out for you, you can always change it up. If you're not feeling them, you can change it to like a star. You could be holding a heart. You could do something simpler. That's up to you. Going back to Kirby's face, I'm just gonna sketch in the highlights of his eyes. Those are gonna be the white areas. And we're also gonna have the highlight areas at the bottom. These aren't going to be as bright, but they'll be a different color. It'll make sense when we get to the coloring stage, so we'll just kind of sketch those in now. I thought it would be fun to add in some stars, a couple of the Luma stars, you know, from the Mario games. These stars are probably easier to draw than some of your typical stars because they don't have to be completely symmetrical. So the Luma stars, kind of like a teardrop. You can think of a little teardrop with a little, what do we call this thing again? A little Miracle Whip top. Little curve point at the end, going in one direction. And we're gonna give it little arms. Pointing out, kind of rounded, not like sharp edges. You could, but I think the curve looks good. These ones have kind of a rounded look to them. Kind of check that they're even across where they meet, you know, top and bottom for where they attach to the body. So if those look kind of even, they look kind of symmetrical, that's good. They don't have to be perfectly the same. Then we need the little feet. Those come off the body, so they connect. You follow the curve around and up. Same on this side. And we get to erase part of the inside. Kind of want to leave this line here. This can stay. I'm gonna erase the one side where the arm meets the body. This kind of looks like our star is facing this way. So this arm is further back. And we'll do our eyes. Position right about there. We can move it down a little bit. Center it on our little guy. That'll look good. I think he also looks a little long, so we're gonna shrink him, distort him so that he's squatter, shorter looking. Kind of like that. These guys don't really have mouths. Just gonna leave it without a mouth. Decided this arm looks wonky, so I'm gonna redraw that. That's a little better. And we can use digital strategies and copy, paste, and flip. And we're gonna put one over here, gonna rotate him a little bit to give some variety and even increase the size. Get some of that variety in there. One for each side. And you know what? I think I'm gonna do a couple of little stars as well. If you're like me and you can't really draw these kinds of stars, that actually wasn't too bad. I'd keep that actually. But a strategy I use all the time when I can't seem to draw stars is literally using the old strategy you learned when, you know, in your like elementary school and you drew stars like this. Well, use the same strategy. Literally do this, do it slowly, evenly, and then you can touch up each of the 5 points. Try and make them even, and then you can erase the middle. Kind of creates for a nice rounded star. The rounded points, it looks good in this case. Which is kind of cute, which fits the style that we're doing for this whole artwork. See, that probably looks better than the one I did over here, but this one looks better. So, both strategies could work. I tried harder in this one though. We will copy and paste because we can. Digital art hacks. Increase the size, rotate, maybe flip, whatever we want to do. And let's add one more star to the other side. Make our composition look a little more even. So now I'm going to look at this and say, do I like the overall composition? And because we're kind of randomly placing the objects around Kirby, that being the stars and the Luma stars, we want to make sure they look nice. We want to see, do we like the placement of everything? Do we want to adjust anything? We're getting pretty much close to the final stages of our sketch. I'm thinking we need to move a couple of these stars around. They're just a little too close to Kirby. I'm gonna merge all our stars onto one layer, so I'm less confused about what I'm looking at. Merging as we go is a good strategy many times. I'm gonna select this star and move it out slightly. I'm gonna do the same with this one, slightly out. That's all I'm gonna do. Now, I'm gonna merge all of our layers for our sketch. And I'm gonna shrink it down because I want to give space for the background ultimately. Now my vision for this is something rather simple as well. We're just gonna do a kind of cloud here. You can rough in your cloud however you want. You can even have other mini clouds around it, maybe overlapping your big cloud, maybe another one here overlapping. Something simple. And we'll say again, do we like this composition? We'll not necessarily want this to be too symmetrical, so I'm gonna erase this one and move it so it doesn't feel super even on either side. So we'll put that other cloud in here. It's a little better. Now our sketch is done, so I'm gonna merge everything. Sketch is all together on one layer. Gonna turn down that opacity and get ready to do the line art. Gonna make a new folder for the line art and a new vector layer. Grab a pen tool, more specifically the G pen tool in Clip Studio Paint. And kind of make sure the sketch is centered. And I'm gonna start lining Kirby. Some of our lines are gonna be thicker and some of our lines are gonna be thinner. We're gonna start out with Kirby having a reasonably thick line, approximately this thick here. And when I'm drawing this, I overlap where the pancake area is here because it's gonna create more consistent lines when we go and erase the intersections. So overlap that for now. And we're gonna do all our lines the same color so we can do all our line work on one layer. For other projects I do different lines, different colors so that I have them on different layers. But for this one we'll just have them all on the same layer. So take your time, do one section at a time. Lots of people find line work hard, so I've got a tutorial for that if you want to take a look. I'll put that at the top right of the video here in case you want to see that. And I'm going to shrink my brush size just a touch for some of these inside details, like the mouth. Certain areas I like to draw on separate line work layers, and eyes is almost always one of them. So I'm going to make a new vector layer for our eyes, and that just has to do with how I go about coloring. So it gives options to color differently. So I'm actually going to do one eye, and since I care that these are symmetrical, I'm going to copy, paste this layer, and flip it to the other side. And it might take a few tries to actually get the shape you want before you even get to that, but here we go. I really want them to look the same in this case. And we can merge those together so our eyes are together. And I'm actually going to do the cheeks the same way as in a separate layer as well. because I probably won't even have lines showing in the end. It's just going to be a solid shape, but I'm just going to get those shapes defined for now. Put them on its own layer and draw them in. Now, if you're really having trouble with these shapes, you can always find your way over to the line tool. The continuous curve tool is kind of my go-to, especially for round shapes. And you can just slowly make dots to complete your shape. And if that's what you need to do for a lot of your rounded shapes, or for the line art, that's fine. Copy that to the other side. Now for areas of overlap like the cheek right now with the foot, you want to find your eraser tool, and it's the vector erase. Check your settings here if the tool doesn't work for you, but I use this one, the erase up to intersection, and it erases where the intersections are, so that's super handy. We're gonna need that for our pancakes as well. So I'm going to continue on with a new layer and start drawing the pancakes. I'm going to ignore the lines I drew inside of the eyes for now. That'll come into play when we do the coloring. That is just, for now, something we did for the sketch to give us an idea what we want to do for the coloring. But let's do the pancakes. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Sometimes it's easier when we zoom a bit. I'm going to start with our butter. Now I may even speed parts of the line art process up, and maybe parts of some of the coloring to not make this video too long, but you can pause as we're going. This part's pretty straightforward, so I don't need to explain a ton. We're just going over our sketch. I decided that this line needed to be moved over here instead, and sometimes while you're lining, you're going to need to make corrections. You're going to notice things you want to change, and go ahead and change them. It's fine to do that. And the other trick you can do is take a object transform tool, and this works with vector layers, and move your line. Every once in a while I need to do this when my line isn't quite right, just a little far over. And click that line while using the object free transform tool and drag it by the corner, reposition it. And where the overlap is with the arms, I'm going to erase using the vector erase tool again. Super awesome tool. It's nice and clean. And go back and do the top of Kirby's head, if you haven't. Alright, I only want to line these stars once each, so I'm going to line the Luma star and then copy paste this and put it on the other side. This will just make things go faster. Copy paste, flip, and adjust the same way we did with the sketch, roughly the same position here. We're going to do the little stars as well, and I'm just going to copy and paste these ones over each other. Now I'm looking at lining our clouds, and I think it would be far easier if we didn't actually line them with lines and we use a different strategy for making our clouds. So we're gonna hold off and turn off our sketch layer for now. Don't delete it. We need it. We'll come back to it when we want to do the background. We'll focus on coloring Kirby and the rest and come back to the clouds after coloring Kirby. Something I would like to tweak before we call our line art done is I like to thicken some of the lines. And I'm going to merge my stars together, my pancakes together, Kirby as one. Eyes are separate and cheeks are still separate for now. We theoretically could merge everything together except for the cheeks and eyes because we're going to do something different with those, but I'm going to just leave these separate for now. But what I want to do is thicken some of the lines, so I'm going to find my way over to the correct line tool, and there is something called correct line width. We can thicken or narrow, and in this case I want to thicken certain areas here. I'd like to thicken the border of the pancakes. Basically where all the pancakes border everything else on those edges. It's going to be along here and along here. Basically just around the whole thing. Just want it to look thicker. Might actually go quite a bit thicker than this. And all the lines inside our pancake area are going to stay the same. So the more times you go over these lines, the thicker it gets. That's just going to give it a little bit of a pop factor compared to the rest of it. We want our pancakes to stand out. And ignore the rest of the inside lines we could do right here. That's looking good. And I like the thicknesses of the other lines. Often bigger, larger objects like Kirby itself has thicker lines. Areas of detail, the more detail, the smaller it gets, the thinner the lines. So you'll notice our thinnest lines are the ones where the pancakes are. We are ready to color. All right, this is an important step, really, really important. Click your folder where your line art is. You could even color it so you know which one is your line art folder. And the important step is set as reference layer. Click that. The whole folder is the reference layer now. You'll see that it's a reference layer because there's a little lighthouse here. When you click off of it, you can see the little lighthouse. That's our reference button. Set it as a reference layer. Keep the sketch separate. Make a new folder. Make a regular layer in that folder. And this is going to be for color. So we're going to take a pink and we're going to take our fill bucket tool. And it's important that we use refer only to editing layer. That is going to help us refer to our reference layers so that we can just click, tap, and fill in the sections we want. So we're going to start with Kirby's body. Make a new layer, clip it on to Kirby's pink body layer. Take a slightly darker pink. I'll admit when I draw these kinds of artworks, I'll use the pen tool because it's just completely opaque and I like that for the edges. So for example, it looks like this. Just want a nice hard edge there, kind of around the bottom of the body. I'm thinking the pink here is a little too dark, so I'm actually gonna erase. Instead of actually using the eraser tool, I use the transparency option instead. So then we can still use our pen tool, but use it as an eraser with the same settings that we have for drawing. Gonna switch back to our color pink. Do a little blip out here for where the arm attaches. We want to show that shape of the arm and do the other side. I'm thinking this pink is too dark, so we're just gonna decrease the opacity to lighten it, or you could change the actual color of it, but I think this is quick. This is a coloring style preference. I like to erase edges. So like this, where our shapes meet the outside of other edges, if that makes sense. So along here. Makes it feel almost shiny. And I think I'm gonna darken our pink inside. If you just set this to lock transparency, you can go over it however you need to. And just, I'm gonna go over the whole thing and just lighten the middle. So if you caught what I did, I darkened all the first layer that we had. And then I'm taking the airbrush and I'm brightening it from the middle. That just makes it pop out. Gives it a little depth as well, which is kind of nice. Let's do Kirby's eyes. It'll look good once Kirby finally has some eyes and some highlights in his eyes. So I'm gonna take a black color in his eyes. This is of course on a new layer. And I'm gonna do the highlights. I'm just gonna clip these on. I'm gonna do the blue and do a U shape here. So your white highlights at the top portion of the eye, and this blue section is on the lower portion of the eye. I'm gonna use the eraser, whatever I refer to as the eraser, and create that transparency and erase to make that shape nice and clean. A rounded shape there. And I'm gonna lock the transparency. I'm gonna find a lighter blue, closer to a cyan color, maybe a sky blue, and use one of my favorites, the airbrush, and do it just from the bottom and just have a little gradient from light blue to the darker. I'm gonna copy this whole thing and bring it to the other side. Flip it, adjust it so it looks good. We're gonna give Kirby's eyes a bit of a glow. So I'm gonna copy our white highlight layer of the eyes. So copy. Now we have two layers out of the same thing of the highlight. The one that's underneath, I'm gonna go up here and go blur, and then click on the, oh gosh, pronunciation. Should I even try to say this? Okay, Gaussian blur. That actually sounds pretty legit. We're gonna go with that. I'm gonna pull this up, maybe a little more, chosen around 50 here, and I want to make it brighter, so I might copy paste it again, double it. I'm gonna merge those two together, so now our fuzzy blur shiny part is on one layer that's behind the white dots that we have. I might even try changing that to a cyan color, just the blurred bit. Preserve opacity, change that to cyan, kind of like that. Some fancy effects for the eyes. If you want to get even fancier, you don't have to do some of these steps, but if you are ambitious and want to try these out, let's see what else we can do. We can even take blue and bring that into the bottom of the eye with the airbrush. I think that's a step worth doing. So if you caught what I did, I took the airbrush, another clipped layer underneath. It's underneath the other ones that we had for these. And just kind of airbrush, taking that royal blue on the bottom of the eyes here. I love adding a lot of detail into eyes. My work tends to have a lot of focus on eyes. So to have some fun here, I'm going to add a little bit of a galaxy effect into the eyes, and I'm gonna do little dots. They're gonna be like stars. So if you use the add glow layer and do little dots, might look kind of nice. I'd vary the size of the dots and have them go up as well. That looks so fun. And copy paste because, you know, I'm lazy, or honestly, probably just efficient. So we'll just say we're efficient, not lazy. Excellent, toss that on. It occurs to me now that the highlight here is, there's a lot more separation here than it does here. So we're going to make the adjustments so they're even. Two layers, we're gonna select these together. Select both layers that are involved. I use Control, click both, lasso, and I'm gonna be exact. So I'm gonna use the arrow keys with the transform. This should make them roughly the same. I'm also gonna pull down the dots on the other side so that they look the same. And they look pretty good. So the eyes are done. Hopefully you followed me on that one. You know what? You can really just mess around with the eyes. You can always add more blobs and things to make it shiny. I can't help myself, so I'm gonna just add this in. It's up to you. You can add this too. Go for it. I'm gonna merge our eye layers all together, just so we don't have too many things happening on the layer section. I'm gonna find a red color for our feet. And a darker red. Darker red for the shadow of the feet. I'm gonna do this coloration the exact way we did Kirby's body. So we're going to curve there, and then we're going to erase along the edges. We'll do the same on the other foot. We just can't erase on this edge because it looks kind of bizarre. So it doesn't look that bad, but I'm not gonna do it. So we're just gonna leave it like this. I'm even gonna add a shiny to his shoe. I think that'll look good. Little shine. What color do we want to use? Using a bit of a light red here. And those shines seem pretty obnoxious, a little too shiny, so we're just gonna tone it down. This is where our opacity comes in. I'm just gonna turn it down. Just a light red now. There we go. And I'm thinking our Kirby body needs some shiny highlights too. I don't know about you guys, but kind of like the shines. Shiny. And I'm going to pick a color for the cheeks. I'm actually going to head on over to our line work layer of the cheeks and set it to be the same color that we used inside the cheek. So find our way over to the Object Free Transform tool while selecting the cheek layer, and you get the option to change the color of the layer. I'm going to color pick it to make sure it's the exact same. Perfect. I'm going to get a little fancy, and I'm going to pull our line work layer down and pull it down to where the cheek layer is and merge them so that they're one and the same. Preserve that opacity and do a little airbrush of a lighter pink, and it transitions to light just kind of at the top only. It's a fun little effect. You can skip this step if you like, optional. Let's get the mouth colored in. This part should be simple. Let's take a dark red, preserve that opacity, and pick an airbrush and kind of lighten from the middle. Get a nice little gradient effect. Don't do all the way the sides. We just want the middle there. We're going to take a lighter peachy pink. And again, we're using our fill bucket tool with the refer only to editing layers so that we don't have to manually color in. We just fill it in. And I'm going to preserve our opacity once again. Take the pen tool and take a slightly darker pink than the tongue and create a shadow. And I'm going to add little highlights again, some shine, just some small dots at the tip of the tongue. And let's color in our pancakes. I'm going to give our pancakes a off-white plate, I guess, and then we'll do the shadow with a gray blue color, slightly blue here. And our pancakes can be golden brown. Don't confuse yourself. We'll have to go section by section here, so skip that section. Do here, skip that, and do here. These are the tops of our pancakes. The sides of our pancakes are going to be a little bit lighter. They tend to show the inner bread color. Is it considered bread? Sure, we'll call it bread. A little bit lighter, and we're not going to do crazy shading on our pancakes. We're going to leave that really simple, kind of flat. We're going to do our butter color. Take a light yellow. And then we'll get a slightly darker yellow, saturate it a little, darken it a touch, and do the sides. Can't tell, so we're going to do a little bit more. That's better. And then we're going to do our whipped cream. It's going to be white. And in this case, I am going to take an off-white color, slightly warm, and use this for the shadows of our whipped cream. And sometimes when I color this way, I'll use the selection tool. So use the selection to the refer layer. It selects based on our line work. So I can go boop, boop, boop. And you'll have to check your settings to make sure it's doing what you want. Here are my settings so you can copy them if it's not working right. And at this point, I'm just gonna draw inside our selected area. Deselect, reselect the next section. The reason I'm doing this is sometimes it's just a little easier than trying to basically draw like this over top and then having to erase or be tedious. This is about speed, so I sometimes use the selection tool and just use that for part of my shading and coloring. Our whipped cream's looking good. And our syrup, I am gonna add some fancier coloring to it. Just pick a slightly red, dark red brown kind of color. Orangey brown. And I'm gonna make a gradient out of it. We need our airbrush. And along the bottom, we're gonna darken it slightly. And I'm gonna take a peachy warm color so that we can have little highlights with our pen tool again and do some shiny shines for our pancake syrup. And I just kind of place them in the corners of the bloops. Sometimes with the bigger bloops we do a couple of dots. I'm going to turn down the opacity a little bit. I think it's too bright. That looks good. I would say our pancakes are colored now. Now, coloring our stars, I am going to pick some yellow. We're going to add a shadow in for our Luma stars. We're going to take our pen tool and take a slightly darker yellowy On main color and change the color. Do that for each line work layer that we need to do that for. The only one we're not changing is the eye layer. We're actually leaving the eye line work layer black as it was. We could leave the background outside of our clouds and a little bit of rounded sky there to be transparent if we want, but we could also just, you know, put a color there. I tend to do a gradient in this case, so we'll fill canvas and take another color and airbrush the top. All right, so we've cropped this in to fill the canvas space a little better. And one final step that's really nice is if you merge your main line works together and make a copy of it, and then with that layer, what you can do is increase the size of all the lines on that layer by going to Object, Free Transform, and increasing the brush size. This gives the whole artwork a bit of a pop feel to it. So this layer has to go in between your color and your background layers there. So recommend this step. It just kind of makes it pop a little bit. And we're done! We did it, you guys. Just make sure your art is centered. Looks good. Feels good to be done. Good job if you made it this far. If you drew something on your page, excellent work. If you're posting your artwork from today on Instagram, you can tag me in your post or use hashtag #drawalongwithshyfoxx, 2 X's at the end, and I'll see your creation. I might even share some of them on my story and shout you out. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow so I can make more videos like this one. Also, we're getting super close to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so it'd be super awesome if you were a part of that. I'm also a live streamer on Twitch. I stream my artwork there. You can come by and ask me questions live. You can also comment those questions down below as well. And you can check out my other social medias. I have Twitter and Instagram, and we have a Discord community as well. I hope to see you guys again. Take care. Bye, friends.